hard on myself. And then I lost my sister. And so I couldn't go to the gym and do like the one thing that I knew I was great at.
The one kind of strong coping skill that you had developed.
Exactly.
In your process of recovery was kind of taken from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you experienced something that was challenging.
Yeah.
Traumatic.
Very traumatic. Yeah. So,
what did you do?
oh man. I struggled. I struggled a lot. The first thing I did was get back into physical therapy. I had taken a break from that for a little while, thinking that maybe that would, if I took a rest, maybe if I came back, I'd make some more progress. But after Lindsay passed away, I almost lost myself. I started to question my Christianity. I have a great church and a great pastor, and they love me and they were there, but like they backed off. And I knew that they were backing off because they couldn't force me to come. And so I questioned my faith in God. I questioned my own sobriety. There for a while, I questioned like the whole relationship with my sister. Had I done something wrong? Could I have done more? And it didn't take me long to realize that I had to get into some sort of counseling. I wasn't sleeping. School was starting. I mean, I think at one point I messaged you and said, I think I want to pull the plug on this. Mm-hmm. I don't think I can do it. And that's like 2 weeks before school started, literally. And I'm like, what am I doing with myself? But I don't know. I had to do a lot of soul searching. And a lot of that was outside, like nature, because I couldn't work out.
It was in the kind of middle peak of the summer.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of trips to the river.
A lot of trips to the river, yeah. And and then even so, when it was cooling off, a lot of trips up to Water Rock Knob and the Parkway. I don't know, there's just something about being outside by yourself. So even though my world had been flipped upside down, I had to find new ways to cope. And in that process, I mean, it was rough. And I had to go back on, mental health medication, and that was something that I was so proud of for getting off to begin with. I've been on some sort of antidepressant since I was probably like 16, and last year I've been off of everything for a little over a year now, and I went back to some counseling, and they're like, we think that you could use some medication, and I was so against it for like a month, and I realized I was starting to look bad. I wasn't sleeping. And so I got put on another antidepressant, and it just it changed me within just a couple
night and day.
Yeah, just a couple of days. My dad and my mom, they were like, oh my gosh, you look like you. So it's been a challenge, but we're making it.
Yep.
One
day at a time.
I'm sorry, I might have misheard you. What did you say your grades were looking like?
Straight A's, Steve.
Straight A student.
Straight A student.
First semester back.
First semester.
Congratulations! I am very proud of you.
Thank you.
You have, you've been a big part of, just my life and my recovery process. We've been close friends, and you've helped me in times of need and listened to my bullshit sometimes, and
vice versa.
Yeah. So I value that in you as a friend and as a classmate, and definitely look forward to seeing you grow on campus in the Collegiate Recovery Program. I'm already putting your name.
I know you are. I know you are.
I'm
when I'm not even there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm such a forward thinker that I'm okay, well, when I graduate in May, who's gonna take over? Who's gonna be the leader of the program? You're top of that list, so.
Of course.
She's going to do big things.
She's going to do big things. So, Tammy, I think that a large part of what we talk about tonight, what interests me about tonight's conversation is kind of what I alluded to at the beginning of the show, is kind of the both sides of this process. Having experienced both being a part of your daughter Courtney's long-term recovery process and the change that she's made in her life, and then also the loss of Lindsay,
Right. Absolutely.
and kind of like what that has been like for both of you guys. And so I think that a good place to start this conversation would be kind of getting into what it was like for you with Courtney and her kind of like process of change, because she shared a lot the last time she was here 3 or 4 months ago, and it would be interesting to hear kind of what that looked like from your point of view, and what even more so like what that felt like, right? And like what it's like to really be there for your daughter and really support her through that change. So I guess like, because she talked about like going down to Florida a few times, making a few trips. Like,
Oh yeah.
The airport moments.
yeah, you
Oh,
know,
every time.
and I don't necessarily know where to start, but I think that like just kind of like getting into what that was like, and what, from your point of view and, you know, the family's point of view, like what?
Well, for really, it was almost like starting out from being hopeless to hopeful. Each time that I saw her get on that plane and head off to Florida, I was like, this is going to be the time. This is going to be the time. Only to get another comment from her stating, "Guess what, Mom? I've relapsed, and I think I need to go back to Florida again." She hid her active addiction very well, very well. I'm guessing she hid it very well, or maybe I was just very turning a blind eye to it. Maybe I'm sure there was many times that I felt that she was probably doing things that I didn't know about, but felt in my gut that she was. So that third trip to Florida, I looked at her as she got on the airplane, and she turned around and she looked at me, and the tears were streaming down her eyes, and they were streaming down my face. And all I did was I just said, God, please, whatever it takes this time for this kid to finally get there, that's it. I mean, I had my knees were sore from getting down on the ground and praying. God, please just help this kid get through this.
Leading up to that point, was there anything different that you noticed this time around?
As far as this last trip to Florida,
in comparison to the prior attempts?
no, not really.
Okay.
She was able to maintain sobriety.
Yeah.
I was still definitely seeing that there was a whole lot of change in behavior that needed to happen. So that's definitely definitely needed some changing.
She talked about when the last time she was here, kind of still abstaining from the drugs, but still clinging to that tough guy mentality behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a process to kind of let go of that. It was a process to rediscover yourself and to like put that persona to the side.
Oh man, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, I guess at what point in that process did you kind of like begin to see changes?
Well, because she was, numerous states away from me, I could only pick up through phone conversations, text
And they're always
messages,
gonna tell you-
writing, and of course, they're telling you what exactly it is that they think you want to hear. But I have to say, probably the letters that started coming in were really heartfelt. That's when I started, because I was hard on her. I said, I'm not going down this road again.
The last time or all?
This last time.
Okay.
Yeah. I said that every time, but the last time I think I really meant it.
The letters from prison.
Yes,
you mean.
the letters.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yes,
cause
the letters from prison. Because I said, I honestly told her, I do not believe I can continue to have a relationship with you if you're going to continue to go back out on the street and do the things that you do and get back into active addiction. And
She wouldn't
I
even
mean, it-
answer my phone calls when I was first arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Like my dad, and like for my dad to answer and my mother, I could hear her in the background saying, I don't want to talk to her. And for me to have to dial my dad's number.
Shout out Jack Kimmel watching
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
my man.
Yeah, I was like, wow, like my dad's answering and my mom doesn't want to talk to me. This is real.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's like every time that your child comes to you and tells you I've relapsed and I need to go back to rehab, there's a part of you that's like, okay, I'm really glad you're going back to rehab. But then again, it's your heart's shattered that you went back to the lifestyle of using drugs.
Yeah.
It's
And-
devastating as a parent. It really is.
And she was doing well that
Mhm.
last time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was able to get your car taken down there and kind of beginning to slowly kind of buy into the program and change your life. And then something happened.
Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been kicked out of a really good halfway house for behavior.
After you completed your,
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I successfully completed an inpatient program. And down there I had to bounce around from a couple of halfway houses because of the environment. They're not all there for you. A lot of it is after your insurance and things. So the first place I ended up at, I realized was not a healthy environment. So I made it to a good halfway house where I stayed for a short amount of time. I was being a bully, picking on the girls.
you were being a bully.
Yes, I know that's so hard to believe.
Mhm.
Um,
I didn't say that. That was an honest question.
yeah, and so I found myself homeless in South Florida, and my dad came to the rescue. And I ended up in a very bad halfway house because I had so much clean time. Down there, they typically don't want someone that has 6 months plus coming into a halfway. Like you should really be at about a 3/4 house now. So I found myself at a flop, and I woke up one evening right before Thanksgiving, and she was overdosing. And, luckily I was able to call 911 in time. And so anyways, I was on my way to the ER to take her clothes and everything and pick her up when I got arrested. They ran my name, and they were like, you're a fugitive.
You had warrants here in Jackson County.
Yeah, I had active warrants. And we knew that. But we had, as a family, we decided that 1 year would be enough for me to be able to come back and face my reality.
Get some clean time under your belt. and kinda
Exactly.
begin the process and then come back and take some responsibility for
Right.
what had happened.
But instead, God had a different plan. And I was sitting in South Florida County Jail at 7 months sober. And that was the phone call I made home when I realized my mother wasn't answering. I panicked and called my dad.
And that's a make or break point, right? Like
Oh, man.
kind of how we talked about a few minutes ago, how like life throws you these challenges, going back to school, losing your sister, your health, right? At 2 years or whatever in recovery, it came at you right out the gate,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to change my life.
Yeah.
And here I am in county jail in South Florida.
Right.
And you weren't necessarily expecting the consequences that you were dealt,
Right.
right?
I thought I was going to get out and like go to my alumni, like my rehab alumni Thanksgiving dinner.
Get
And-
bonded out.
yeah,
go
I'm
to
like,
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was all going to be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Ha.
Jackson County doesn't take well to absconders from
It
justice.
doesn't sound like it.
No.
Probation violation is what it was, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, when I finally was like shipped back up here, that was kind of like the pitch I gave to the judge. Like, I'm a law-abiding citizen now. Like, I have pay stubs, and like I was working a program, and they're like, Miss Kimmel, like 3 strikes and you're out. Like, we're so glad to hear that you're sober, but you had your chances, you know. So yeah.
And there's definitely a fine line, like obviously being a person who's been in trouble with the law, being a person who's experienced the extreme pain and suffering that addiction causes in our lives. Obviously, like, I'm a firm believer in second chances, but I'm also a believer in like taking responsibility for our actions. And so, like, the question is like, where is the middle? Where do we meet in the middle? Like, we have these diversion programs over in Waynesville and other counties that have, shown to be pretty successful.
Right.
Cheap plug, we're going to have Gary and Yoakum, the case manager for the LEAD program, will be on next Monday night.
Wow.
So we're going to be getting into that. But like,
Very nice.
where is the middle path in a county that doesn't have a program like that? What is the most appropriate way to approach a situation like that? And we'll get into a little bit of that, like with like education and stigma and things like that. But like, they've heard it 100 times.
Exactly.
Like, so I can see both sides of the argument, right? For every Courtney Kimmel who thrives in recovery, there's 5 other, Jennifer Blank that's gone, right? Right back out there. And so how many chances does somebody get before they are faced with consequences? How many people come through that courtroom and say, I got 7 months in recovery, I'm trying to do the right thing.
Right.
But also, how many people can go through something like that, like you did, experience the consequences by going to prison and doing what you did, right? With very little resources available to you at that time.
Right.
So what was the outcome of this situation?
Of me like being incarcerated?
Yeah.
You mean? I feel like that was the bigger part of my equation that I was able to figure out. So I was 7 months sober, but again, just 2 or 3 weeks prior to being arrested, I was kicked out of a halfway house for bad behavior. So my first couple hours in Raleigh, I realized I am not a tough cookie. I am not going to give any attitude. I'm going to do as I am told and not question it. And it was hard. I've seen some things that I wouldn't want anyone to see. But in that time, I was able to do, again, some soul searching. And I carried a Bible around with me. It went everywhere on the compound with me. And I don't know. I had a really great bunkmate, and she was able to teach me a lot. And I still have contact with her. And we'd study the Bible together. And just seeing like how people who are doing like a hard time, how they live, and like how that affects them. I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't become that, but that I would become something so much more, because I was already like kind of being that person with the bad behavior and like just out to get everybody. And I didn't need prison to make me any worse than that. Like I had that down pat.
But you made the decision not to go down that road.
Right. Because I knew when I got out, there was no going back to Florida. There was 9 months post, and I was going to have to do that at my parents' house because I didn't have any income, so I had to, it was like a do or die moment. I can either keep sobriety and grow in faith, or I can just screw around in here, and when I get home, it'll be the same old, same old. And I didn't want that.
So why do you think you made the decision that you made?
I think part of it was because I really wanted it, and the other part was I saw how they were living in there. Addiction still affects inmates. Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing on the inside. So
now, while all this is going on, right, however many few years this was kind of leading up to the point that it was at, what was going on in Lindsay's life at that time? Was that something you guys were kind of dealing with simultaneously?
Yeah. But at it from a long distance, because Lindsay was in Ohio. And, once again, goes back to we're going to tell Mom exactly what it is that we think she wants to hear. I know that the first time I found out that Lindsay had been using street drugs was in June of 2010. that was by accident. She had to have an emergency surgery, and the anesthesiologist said, I need to know what you've been doing, and I need you to be honest because all it takes is a blood test. Well, when she said the heroin word, I about fell out of the chair. I was not expecting that at all. I did not know at that point that I knew she was dabbling in some marijuana at that point, but nothing to the extent of heroin. So needless to say, that was pretty shocking. And she told me it was just a kind of a one-time thing. She had been experimenting, and I said, well, I don't know how much experimentation you do with heroin, but you know, that's a demon that'll take your life. So I hope that this is the last time I hear that you do that. So, and it was a back and forth thing. I know that Lindsay had tried numerous attempts at sobriety, and upon her passing, I was fortunate enough to actually gain possession of her journals while she was going through IOP. She was in a Suboxone clinic. She said in her journal, I have two choices. I continue to use drugs and I die, or I get sober and I can be the sister, the daughter, the aunt, the granddaughter that I know that I can be. And it wasn't until I read those journals, which has just been in the last couple months, that I understood really how hard her battle really was.
Yeah.
How it's really difficult.
2010, I mean, that's kind of like mainstream opioid epidemic, like front pages of, you know, everywhere. So, I mean, like getting that news had to be like an eye-opening experience.
Oh, yeah, because that was nothing. I mean, like I said, I never really even heard of heroin. It was, at that point, it was meth, you know. Meth was the drug on the street at that point.
Around here. Even like back home in Florida, I remember my cousin overdosed in 2010 and passed in Charlotte. And I was in active addiction at the time, and I remember getting the call, and I was just like, I didn't understand, because I live in the lifestyle that I lived. I'd never seen heroin. It just wasn't around. You find cocaine and meth and any of that stuff all you want all day long, but I just didn't see it. So to get the news that she had overdosed from heroin before, like,
it was even a thing.
Before it was a thing. Before it was very shocking and like hard to deal with. So what did her, because you mentioned she was like went through like an IOP program.
Yes.
Like, what led up to that kind of attempts at recovery? Was that like, was there any like legal things, or was it strictly like, okay, I need to like get?
There wasn't any legal problems involved with that as far
I guess
as her
so,
deciding
like, was it
to
voluntary?
go. It was voluntary.
Uh-huh.
I think she wanted to. I think there was a part of her that really, really wanted to find and maintain sobriety. But to go back a little bit in her history, she was diagnosed several years ago with bipolar disorder, severe depression, PTSD, whole lot of those co-occurring disorders that a lot of times accompany addiction issues. And I think she got on some medications that were supposed to try to help her with all of that. And I think, unfortunately, she started abusing those drugs. And then once she couldn't get out of those what she needed anymore, then she turned back. But I know it was an ongoing battle for 8 years. You know, maintain sobriety for 6 months, 8 months, relapse for a good year. She only did go for professional treatment in regards to her addiction one time. The rest of it was, I'm going to detox on my own, and I got this. I can do it. Every time.
And what was your relationship with her? Because I remember when we talked last podcast, you mentioned kind of getting up to Ohio at some point.
I used to go up there quite a bit.
Yeah.
So my sister and I, we got high together. It wasn't always a thing. That was in, I think, 2015 around Christmas time, or even 2014. That was like our first kind of thing together. And even after that, I mean, she always went back home to Ohio. And we always kept contact. And then this last time I went to rehab, I remember cutting her off. I just remember
to protect yourself
Right.
for like your own
Exactly.
recovery, setting some boundaries.
And even though we were a world apart, I was in South Florida and she was in Ohio. I love my sister very much, but her negativity would just take you down another path. And I was already struggling in Florida as it was. I woke up every day. Is today the day that I'm going to go get high? Is today the day like I'm going to go run out on my halfway house? And so the few times Lindsay and I did talk, it was really negative. And I just always remember hanging up the phone feeling like, God, I love her so much, but whew, like, man, I need to go see a meeting after that. And I remember she came and saw me while I was in Jackson County. The last time I saw her was through a TV screen.
Before you went to prison?
Before I went to prison. So that's the last time I saw her. And I wrote to her and I talked to her on the phone while I was in Raleigh. And actually, we were able to get some of her very few belongings that she had, and she still had the card that I sent her while I was in there. And so it was just kind of like, I beat myself up, not as much as I used to. I mean, the first probably like 4 months. I mean, up until here recently, I blame a lot of that, of not talking to her. There's like this guilt, and I almost let it get to me to a point of no return. But I can just tell by going through her belongings and stuff and what she had. Like, she loves me, and she knows that I loved her very much, even though we didn't talk. And I still have text messages from her, and we talked last Thanksgiving, and I told her that even though there was some distance between us, there was a reason why, and I explained that reason, and that I loved her. And she wrote me back and said that she understood completely, that nothing was worth risking my sobriety, and she knows that there was history between us, but that she understood that there was still sisterly love.
She knew that she wasn't living a lifestyle that you could welcome kind of back into your life. So you kind of maintain contact, but at a healthy distance.
Yeah.
Through letters and occasional phone calls, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tammy, prevented her from kind of getting to a point where, like Courtney, where she could sustain some long-term recovery? Like, what were the barriers?
I think a lot of it had to do with just her circumstances in general. She had a lot of health issues, some drug related, some not drug related. She'd been trying to get Social Security disability. She lived with her dad. She had some younger siblings in the house with her. I think she just was the kind of person that felt defeated all the time. She fought for 4 years to try to get this Social Security disability. I mean, it was appeal after court hearing, and go get some more medical documentation and do this. And it was just, I just feel like she just felt like no matter how hard she tried to obtain something, whether it was sobriety or anything else, that sometimes that she wasn't worthy of it. And I think the stigma associated with her addiction had a lot to do with that. And when I say that, here's a perfect example of getting a certified letter in the mail from her primary care physician stating that she would no longer be able to be seen in the practice because they did not have an ability to have a therapeutic relationship any longer due to her inability to pass a drug test. So if that's not stigma, I don't know what is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So she was pretty disappointed in all of that. So it was just like always feeling like she was trying to fight an uphill battle, and for every couple little steps that she'd take forward, she'd take double that amount back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big part of Lindsay's problem, mine was behavior. Hers was the lifestyle. Every time she come down to visit us, if it was for 2 weeks or 6 months, she was like craving to get back to Cincinnati, Ohio.
Because that's where
I think she was drawn. Yeah, she was just
Yeah.
drawn to the big city lifestyle.
The
and-
city lifestyle. She knew a bunch of people. She could hustle up there, and that means like anything, you know. Here, she didn't know a lot. She only knew like my friends. And all my friends loved her growing up, but she was like addicted to the lifestyle, just the chaotic, like just I don't know. It was just chaotic and crazy and fast paced, and that was my sister for the longest time.
you're saying it's more, maybe not even the drugs, but the kind of behaviors associated with the drugs.
Yep. Absolutely.
Lindsay was actually a trained phlebotomist. Not that she ever worked in the field, but she was had obtained her certification and
Yeah. Never used it.
never used it. She, very, very smart person, but could never figure out quite where to take the initiative and then work her way into the place that she really needed to be. And if she did get there, she struggled staying there.
Yeah. It's just like in hearing both the stories, right? It's like Courtney was met with difficult circumstances, and for some reason she like found the resiliency somewhere, and that's like the miracle question, right?
Yeah.
It's like why
Why?
this individual, regardless of sisters and
Mm-hmm.
whoever, just why one individual, when faced with being kicked out of a halfway house at 7 months sober, arrested, extradited
Like a wild
like a wild animal,
caged in a van.
sent to the state capitol, right?
Yeah.
And why that one person can overcome those things, and like what that mind, like the mindset when you're faced with those challenges, when you're faced with those difficulties, because that's what creates those like patterns of behavior. By overcoming those obstacles, you're creating like strength. Like they talk about like neuroplasticity in your brain, but just the strength to overcome, right?
Right.
And then you're ready for the next challenge. You're ready for by experiencing that, by overcoming those obstacles, by doing your however many months in prison, by getting out, maintaining your sobriety, that when you're faced with a severe health issue that's preventing you from getting back into the gym, which is your number one pathway, when you're faced with the fear of walking into the classroom as a 24-year-old.
27.
I was trying to give you some love, man.
Okay. Yeah.
As a 27-year-old young lady, when faced with the loss of not only a loved one but a sister from the disease that you personally experienced, you're able to overcome those, right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
I know.
But it's like by facing these challenges, leaning into them, relying on your faith, trusting yourself, building up the confidence, right? It's like those things. So like tomorrow when you walk into the classroom and your teacher's like, guess what? We got a pop quiz today. How are you going to handle that?
I'm gonna probably freak out for 2.5, and then
You're gonna close your eyes, take some breath, say a prayer, whatever you got to do,
Right.
and you're gonna muscle through it. The answer is you're gonna muscle through it,
for sure.
right? And you're gonna get a kick-ass grade, right? Because you're confident in yourself.
Yeah.
And like, for me, like that's where it's at. That's the magic. That's the money, right there. Putting yourself in situations where, whether it's like just little small things, like. We were talking about goals last night at dinner with some friends, like little small things, like putting yourself in a place in your life where you're faced with challenges.
Yeah.
Like this stupid little podcast that we do every week, right? It started off as an idea, right? Why? Because it was something that I thought would bring me joy and kind of like ease some of the difficulties that I was going through, because it's something that I enjoy, because it's something that I'm passionate about, right?
Right.
So what did we do? We like took the idea and we ran with it, right? And I put all of my effort into making this thing as best as it can be to overcome the challenges, right? We've been faced with challenges. We
Yeah.
lost our access to the studio, so we raised money to buy our own equipment. Courtney moved away to pursue a career in her field. We made adjustments to continue the program and do more.
Right.
What do you think about overcoming these little obstacles that come to us? Just like, there ain't nothing that can stop me.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is hanging out for a couple hours,
Right.
So like, and I think that's what people are afraid of. They're the fear of facing the challenges and the lack of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had zero confidence when I was actively using,
Yeah, me too.
besides like, socially with
Yeah.
people and stuff.
Yeah.
Ladies, man.
Okay.
Come on, girl. I had zero confidence in my abilities, right? And like, how can we teach people that kind of like self-confidence? How can we teach them to overcome these little challenges and grow from them and gain the confidence to do it again, set the bar a little bit higher? Like you hear, like, involved in the 12-step fellowship, they talk about like a day at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Set the bar a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Set the bar a little bit higher. And like your mind will want you to set the bar down here, like you going back to school,
Yeah.
right? You try and come at me talking about, yeah, I'll just take like a couple classes, 1 or 2.
6 later.
You're 6 later and what? Straight A student.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like so what's going to happen next semester?
6 classes.
Yeah. And
17 credits.
and thrive and be successful and grow into that leadership position, and then take on the next Courtney Kimmel that walks into the classroom as a mentor. Be like, hey, girl, I got you. Come on. Let's go. Let's do this collegiate recovery thing.
Right.
That's what's going to happen. You got the confidence. So,
That's interesting that you say that, because that kind of reminds me about Lindsay a little bit. She, some of the happiest that she sounded was the times that she was going to IOP and that she was actually sober, and would call me up and, oh my gosh, Mom, I just got out of an NA meeting and it was amazing. And, and she'd do that for months on end and then just all of a sudden quit going. And I never could quite figure out why. I think it's really hard work.
mm-hmm.
It's really
is.
hard work, and you have to put forth a lot of effort. And sometimes I think people just get tired, or they get
Discouraged.
they get discouraged. That stigma is attached. Even if you're in recovery, you still have that stigma that's attached to you. And unfortunately, that stigma, I think that's one of the probably the most cruel and difficult parts of addiction that people have to overcome.
Let's talk about that. Let's go down that rabbit hole. You want to?
Sure. Let's do it.
It's a subject that gets brought up every single week
Yep.
on this show. And I've been pretty open on talking about like the lack of me personally experiencing that. And last Friday we did that extra show with Jeff, and I was asking him because he brought it up as well, and like through my ownership and acceptance and openness with my story, like kind of like you have
Mm-hmm.
today and on the daily, there has been very, very little times in my life that I've experienced this kind of, I don't want to like this to be taken the wrong way, but this catchword that you hear and read everywhere. You see an article about addiction, or you see a story about addiction, odds are the topic of stigma will come up. It's just something that I haven't experienced. And I asked Jeff about it, and he was talking about how him and his wife were attempting to like foster parent or adopt,
cool.
something like
Yeah.
that, and his criminal background check related to the behaviors of his addiction. That was like 6 years, 7 years ago, like a pretty significant amount of time. He's like, that's the stigma that I'm advocating for. He's on the board for APNC. So like, he's like, that's what I advocate for. It's kind of like that secondary, like, that you don't necessarily see or experience like firsthand. Because like, and granted, I've had a pretty simple life. Like I'm not applying for a loan or attempting to get a car or anything like that. But like, I just go to school, you know? So like, it's a pretty simple life. But to like do things like we do on campus, right?
Yeah.
And be extremely open about our stories and talk to administrators, deans, presidents daily. And like them not only like being accepting, but welcoming. And like at my job, granted, it's like a part-time job that I just, whatever, but like I walk in there the very first day and say, yeah, this is my resume and this is where I come from and this is why I'm here. And just being like, just owning it in the same thing. So like, I don't know, very few times, even like being pulled over. When I get pulled over, I have 3 DUIs on my record, right? Getting pulled over for a taillight out, right? The officer walks up to my window. He knows my record. It's right there in front of him on the screen.
Right.
I hand him my driver's license, and I initiate the conversation. He doesn't even, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm going to school here. Where are we going tonight? Whatever the conversation, like just being like that forward and that open about it. And to where like he doesn't even mention my past. He doesn't even mention or begin to like interrogate or ask those questions that might make me feel like he's suspecting me of whatever. So I guess what I'm getting at is what specifically types of stigma might either of you two like
I think we can both answer that.
have?
I'll let
Because it's everyone's story is different. Like, and people experience it all the time. I mean, like Caleb with trying to run to Oklahoma, stuff like that. You know, it's obviously out there.
Right.
So I guess like what I'm asking is like maybe not even so much about like what specifically you like experience. I mean, you can obviously go into that, but like what are the ways to overcome it? You know?
I think owning it is a big part. When the first 2 times that I went to rehab and then I came back, the NA and AA scene here was very scarce. I mean, I remember getting a pamphlet and it being like one-sided. And I can remember like my parents catching hell because my name was in the paper and, you know, I was an addict and I remember being ashamed. So I think that shame brought on some stigma already. Like people just automatically, because I was embarrassed of it, other people automatically thought that they should be too. And even today in recovery, I mean, I'm pretty straightforward when it comes to my past because now today I can own it. But something that is still a barrier for me is my criminal background, and it keeps me from cash handling jobs sometimes. And kind of like you, like walking in somewhere and being like, this is my resume, this is where I come from, and this is who I am now. I've noticed I have a better chance when I do that instead of like hiding it and acting like I'm ashamed. So I have noticed just in the past few years with my confidence, and now too with the amount of recovery that's going on here in Western North Carolina, it has come a long ways, but it still has a long ways to go.
But we're doing the groundwork.
Yeah.
People like me and you, we're doing it on the daily, on the regular.
You know, like the Night of Hope with Full Circles, and the library, the mental health documents that they're doing, the documentary discussion that I met you at, you know? I mean, it's just like things like that that's kind of opening the community. And I think the more people that we can get in recovery that are willing to continue to speak and open up with, I'm a person in recovery, it's more welcoming and allows people to realize that it's nothing to be ashamed of.
And that's kind of the way I feel about it too. I know I changed my title on my Facebook page to I'm a truth talker, not a secret keeper. I was shameful for Courtney's actions, Lindsay's actions. Lindsay had a criminal background. So yeah, and I thought, you know what? You can't keep those secrets anymore. keeping those secrets, it's killing people. Need to make people aware of what's really going on, and the statistics. The 174 people a day that lose their life to this disease. That's 63,000 plus people a year. To me, that's staggering and heartbreaking. These people that are dying, they are fathers, their mothers, their sisters, their brothers. I mean, it's just, there is no discrimination there. I know that's kind of a, the thing everybody likes to say, oh, just this disease doesn't discriminate, but it's ultimately that is the absolute truth. There is no discrimination when it comes to the disease of addiction.
And I just want to kind of tap in there for a second with my sister. I know my mom has mentioned more than once that she has some pretty severe health issues.
Both mental and physical.
And physical, correct. And I know that the last time she went to a hospital, she was treated very badly because of the way she looks and the scars that were on her arms. She was discriminated right from the get-go. And they basically told her, we know that you're here seeking pain pills. We can't help you. Go on about your business. And the thing is, I believe we know it's true from my sister's friends that have reached out to us that Lindsay was basically getting high because she was trying to be a doctor to herself. She was trying, we know for a fact that she was seeking fentanyl only. She wasn't like trying to go just for like heroin, like she was going for the fentanyl. And we know in trying to do that, she was trying to diagnose her pain because nobody else would.
Yeah, so because of the lack of compassionate care for her, like physical health,
Yes.
and probably mental health too, but for physical health, she was unable to, those needs were unable to be met.
Exactly.
So she sought out
Yes.
drugs on her own to cope and deal with the pain and what she was experiencing kind of physically.
Yes. And I can remember she'd call mom up, screaming and crying with the amount of pain that she was in. And I know that she coughed for probably like 6 months. I mean, it was crazy. And her dad and mom begged for her to go to the ER. And she said, I would rather stay here on this couch and be sick than to go through how they treated me a few months ago.
Yeah. And it's like, it only takes one bad experience to leave that like bad taste in your mouth in any profession, whether it's like, shopping at a, convenience store or a restaurant, you're not going to go back.
Take an addict who's like broken and beaten down already, who's struggling to just stay alive anyways.
And all she wants is the pain to go away.
Yeah.
And
And
then
so
you're basically told you're not worthy.
Yeah.
You're not worthy of being treated.
Like, that's the problem. That is a serious freaking problem.
How do we fix it?
Oh, man.
What, like I talk about this a lot, but I think that a lot of this type of social change, it takes time,
It does.
right? It's not something that we will experience in a year or 2
Oh,
years
no.
or 3 years or potentially even our lifetime. So what can we do collectively as a individual, as a small town community? What can we do to begin to shift that point of view and to begin to shift that level of understanding to where people who are in a situation like Lindsay will be able to receive the care that she needs? When you meet those physical health needs, then you can begin to address the addiction. You can begin to address some of the mental health stuff. But if she's in so much like physical pain, you're not going to be able to. How do you fix it at the root cause?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that other than, for everybody to be a voice, have a voice, go out there and educate, tell people what it's all about, and try to explain the impact that the stigma of addiction has and how it keeps people from seeking the help that they not only need, but that they deserve.
Mm-hmm. And I think our little town, we're headed in the right direction, finally. After many years, you know, and that just goes back to say what we're doing on campus and the podcast and, you know, Sunrise out in Asheville, Meridian. I mean, everyone is finally starting to like kind of come together. And I feel like we can't just one nonprofit organization can't do it by themselves. You know, like we need all the services, all the resources together out there, like a little army.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to take an army to, you know, and I guess it just starts in our smaller communities and trying to get people to open their eyes to the bigger problem here.
Absolutely. I agree with that one 100%.
I think that people's eyes are beginning to open because of, like you mentioned, how it's affecting literally everybody,
Yeah.
right? I think that you may be onto something with like because it's so rural here, and so like everybody's like spread out, and there's these little pockets of people who are doing phenomenal things,
Right.
right? Out in Cherokee,
Mm-hmm.
collegiate recovery, celebrate recovery,
Right.
even some of the 12-step fellowships over around campus and stuff. Like there's little pockets of people
Yes.
doing solid work, but there's definitely like a disconnect in the services that are being provided, and
That's
like
right.
specifically like the aftercare and like
Mhm.
connecting them with those little pockets,
Right.
right? Like the guy over at the detox center will say, okay, here's a list of meetings, or here's, you know, this, and there's no like kind of like case management, follow through,
Right.
soft handoff. And it's like in you know, I can see where like in a bigger like metropolitan type community, you might not be able to facilitate that because of
Right.
like population and stuff, but it's so much more valuable in this rural community because everything's so spread out.
Right.
It's not like you can just say like, hey, go down here. Well, how do you expect, you know, Steve Steen, who just got his 3rd DUI, to get a ride over to Celebrate Recovery on a Tuesday night to go to a meeting at 7 o'clock? I could barely get my ass to work in the morning. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just, so then what happens? Then I don't build that network. I don't build that community of people who can support me when these big things happen,
Right.
when life challenges me. How do I overcome the challenges if I don't have the support?
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, you burn the bridges with your family. You don't have the support at home, or there's still active use in the house, and there's just so many variables that, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where to start.
I know it.
I do not know where to start. So leading up to Lindsay's death, what was going on in your life, Courtney? What were you doing? Was there concern? You were focusing on your recovery, you were getting ready to go back to school, you were dealing with
Trying to focus on my recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggled.
mm-hmm.
And I think I can just be honest and say there were several people that were worried about
Concerned.
me. Yeah. I mean, I had the amount of people that I had reach out to me and say, hey, you know, we know that you've just lost your sister, but if you need sober support, like, we're here for you.
Yeah. You really you like retreated. You
Oh, yeah. I isolated myself.
Isolated.
Yeah. I became mad at the world. I was able to find every close friend of mine and like blame them for something that resulted in my sister's death afterwards. Like not being there for me and not checking on me as much as I would like. Or, I mean, I had like 3 arguments with my very good friends. And I think it was just easy for me to outlash my anger on them because I didn't know where else to put it. I couldn't put it in the gym where I was used to putting my anger or any other emotion. I mean, I did. I questioned my recovery. I questioned my faith. Stopped returning my pastor's phone calls. Kind of distanced myself from you for a little while, along with other sober supports. And when I returned to church a few Sundays ago, they were like, "Oh my gosh, finally! Like, we knew you'd come back, but we knew that we had to leave it to you in order to find your way back." So it was tough. I don't even know. I mean, sometimes I say it's a miracle, but I'm even like still here after something so tragic like that.
What was like the turning point in the like grieving process where you could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and you kind of could really experience that level of healing begin?
I think working with my counselor one-on-one, I had an expectation of grief, and the grief that I'd known is things that I see like online and in movies, and everyone grieves so differently. And when I would tell my counselor like how I felt about something, she's like, "That's your own expectation. Like, you grieve however you're supposed to, you know, like if you want to go out and you want to laugh, like that's your business. Don't feel bad about it." But I think probably like starting school was like the kind of, because right there before school started, I was going to pull the plug on it. But the last thing I said to my sister while she was in the casket was like, "I'm going to stay sober and I'm going to finish this degree and I'm going to do badass things with it. Like, I'm not going to let you die in vain, you know?" And I sat there and felt sorry for myself and questioned my sobriety, but I thought, how selfish am I being? I'm being selfish. I'm being so selfish to question my sobriety after I just watched the pain of my mother go through losing my sister. How could I even think about going and getting high? You know? Like, and I just think that school and counseling has been like a big part of it, honestly. Like, I'm already learning so much of who I am just through school alone.
The classes.
Yeah. So that's pretty neat.
What do you think, Tammy?
I'm beyond proud of this girl right here. I mean, like I said earlier, she's going to do big things. She's going to do big things. You know, and I noticed that I was really kind of holding my grief inside. I didn't want to show how much pain that I was in because I didn't want my pain to have an impact on her. I knew she was struggling on her own, so it was like, okay, you got to continue to be the matriarch of the family, Mom. This is what you've always done, you know. And I mean, I grieved alone for a really long time, and Courtney kept coming to me, and she said, "You know, Mom, you don't have to hide your grief. You can come and talk to me. Don't just sit here and try to do this on your own." And the wave of emotions that I felt have been everywhere, from being just absolutely heartbroken to being angry to being this superwoman. I'm going to become this recovery ally to private detective that I want to find out who brought my daughter the drugs. And I mean, it has just been like this roller coaster of a ride, and I'm still on it. I mean, it's still fresh. It's raw. It's been 5 months since she passed away.
There are some realistic goals that you can set, and there's some realistic action that you can take, right? Have you thought about kind of what that might look like?
I really want to start some type of a support group. I think there's probably enough out there. Well, I shouldn't use the word enough, but there's a good start with groups for recovery for those that do have substance use disorders. The NAs and the collegiate recovery, Celebrate Recovery. I'd really like to start a support group for parents.
Yes. I do hope, pardon me, I do hope that you two are able to make it to our Christmas party, because I would like to introduce you to a former guest who was on early in the beginning, like 4th or 5th, maybe 6th episode, Sherry Barker.
Mm-hmm.
You seen her
I recognize the name.
stuff online? Go back and listen to her podcast. She went through a similar experience,
Right.
and she started a group in Asheville called Mother to Mother.
Oh, wow.
And it's a support group for grieving mothers who have lost a loved one or who are experiencing a loved one in an active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman is just amazing. Like her, the way that she has kind of decided to live her life and kind of like accept the things that the cards that she's been dealt, but take ownership of them and take action in ways that she can not only foster healing in herself, but help others in need. And she did it because what happened, again, you can go back and listen to it. What happened was because she was open, she's like a writer, she's into writing and stuff. So she was very open about the loss of her daughter as well. And she began like posting kind of like things on Facebook, just typing up some stuff, posting on Facebook. And what happened was a lot of other mothers began to contact her. Her post would get shared, or somebody would see her, might be somebody she didn't know, but they would contact her and be like, "Hey, I'm kind of going through a similar situation. What do you suggest we do? What do you suggest I do?" And it was just such an inspirational story and awesome to connect with her. I'm trying to see when it was exactly. Episode number 9.
Wow.
So if you go back and listen to that, Sherry Barker, she's just a phenomenal woman, a wealth of knowledge, and could definitely like not only like share with you like her experience, but also like kind of work with you.
That's great.
If that is something that you would be interested in pursuing, because there's obviously a need for it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's obviously a need for it.
For sure.
And she very well might be like watching this episode, and I wouldn't be surprised if she contacted you by the time this thing's over. So,
That's awesome.
because that's the type of woman that she is. So
Cool.
What about you, Courtney?
What about me?
What about you? Goals.
Oh, man.
I ask everybody about goals. when
Yeah,
they come on the
my
show.
2 biggest goals right now are to finish the semester, like 3 more
Yeah,
weeks.
you're there. You're there.
And I'm hoping that over this very long Christmas break, it's like a month long. Did you know that?
Yes,
like
that's,
almost.
that's every.
Oh, well, it's amazing. I'm so excited.
It's not special this year because Courtney's in the program this year.
Well, I can pretend like it
Oh,
is.
it's special. It is special.
So I'm going to finish out this semester super strong, and I'm hoping that over my month break that I can kind of find my spark for the gym again. And this time, like, you know, my physical therapist, he's so awesome, and he's like a cheerleader for me. But I've come to the point now where I just have to learn how to push through the pain. Not to the point where it's like excruciating, like horrible pain. But
Is it healthy to,
yeah.
like, you got the green light,
Mhm.
there's no risk
Yes.
of.
Right. I'm just very weak. My lower body is very weak. So it's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of time back in the gym to get me not even where I used to be, but just get me kind of active again.
Let's talk a little bit about what the value of exercise and health
It's so valuable.
in relationship to your recovery.
Oh, man.
And like the transformation and kind of like what
Yes.
that was like for like both of you to like see her like really like find something.
I've never stuck with it. And like, so it's been a year. It was a year in September. So my Facebook and like Snapchat memories are coming up, and I can see like the first couple of pictures, you know, I was taking while I first started. And even now to see like where I am, which isn't in the gym, I'm still proud of myself because I've never stuck with something for so long. I can remember like all the gym memberships I've bought over the years, and I'll go
Many.
like 3-6 times and like, that's it, I'm done, you know, because I didn't see results. So watching me become like the super confident, like outgoing woman through working out, man, I was just feeling awesome all summer long. I'm like, yeah, like I'm this badass who can lift weights and I feel good about myself. And then it was just like yanked from me, like literally, like all these doctors and PTs are like, you cannot work out. Like and I was misdiagnosed for months. And so like I was angry and I was upset, and I wasn't getting my dopamines going anymore.
It directly affected your mental well-being.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which in turn like affected the rest of your life and like your schoolwork and relationships and all that stuff.
I know. I know it. Yeah, so I don't know. It's I've never wanted something so like to get back in it so bad, and I think like I've gotten what's the word I'm looking for? Complacent with myself, and not like, oh, physical therapy twice a week is cool for me, like whatever. No. I have like such a higher standard than that, and I'm just ready to get back in there and lift some heavy shit.
In the beginning, when she first started her fitness journey, not only did I see a transformation in her physical appearance, but I saw her transform mentally as well.
Yeah.
Much more positive, much more outgoing, confidence.
So
yeah,
confident.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it definitely impacts you in both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that do you do any dieting, or is it mostly just exercise? Try to eat as healthy as possible. Like, do you follow any kind of?
Pretty much. No.
Okay. You saw I'm looking to locate a nutritionist.
Oh yeah, I did see that post.
And we do have somebody coming
Awesome.
in like January, but like I want to talk to a nutritionist, not about the physical health.
Yeah.
I want to talk to a nutritionist about the relationship between the food that we eat and the cognitive performance and how it affects like our overall mental well-being. Something that like fascinates me. I got into some book like a couple weeks ago. There's like some app. I can barely think of what it's called. Like one of my biggest, like most valuable coping skills, hobbies is reading. I damaged my brain and avoided learning for so many years. Like I just flat out avoided it. That like, yeah, boy, you hear that? Who's up? That like I like when I got into recovery, I really just like started like just reading as much as I can. I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to learn as much as I could.
You and your Buddha books.
It's all, I ventured out. That was at the beginning, but like in the last 2 years, I've ventured out and I've started reading like just whatever seems interesting, expanding my like knowledge.
TMZ.
What's that?
Okay, never mind.
And then remember, I'm old school, man.
I know you are. That's why
Somewhere along the lines of National Enquirer, but a more
like
current version.
Books. And so like when the semester's in full gear and I have so much reading, so much writing to do, I don't get to read, right? And so I don't know how I've never heard of this before, but I found this like app called Blinkist or something like that. I verify what it's called, but I've been using it for like the last 2 weeks. And it's like both audiobooks and, the written stuff, but it's like Cliff Notes. So it's like you can you can listen to or read basically like the high spots, the most important information of a book in like 15 minutes. So I could so I've been using that.
They have textbooks on there.
I don't know. They might.
That would be amazing.
They totally might, but it's been so valuable.
Sounds
so like
cool.
giving me a little bit, because then what I do is I'll like turn it on, I'll listen to an audiobook, knock it out in like 15 minutes, and if there's something that interests me in that book, then I'll go back and read it. You can like take notes and stuff in it, so I'll go back and read the pages, and then if I really like it, then I'll add it onto my wish list and buy it on Amazon or whatever. But I found and that's by listening to a book that was specifically about food and cognitive performance. I was like, dude, I totally need to get and a lot of it was like the same old kind of like, low carbs.
Sugar is so bad.
Sugar so
for your
bad. It's like the
brain.
stuff we know.
Yeah.
But I guess it was like more like specific about how it affects your brain and
That's cool.
what it does to your brain.
Yeah.
What those things do to your brain, because you hear so much about what it does to your body, to your weight, to your heart, this and that, but you don't hear a lot about what it does to your mind. And that's what I'm like interested in, because I hope Caleb's not listening or watching, but I'm not like the exercise guy. I'm the meditation guy. I'm the internal.
Yeah.
I'm the internal guy.
Not for me.
Yeah. So, you got the news. You guys went up there to.
Yep, the dreaded phone call that every mother just kind of waits for. Yeah.
When was the last time that either of you talked to her or heard from her before you got the call?
I talked to her 2 days prior. She died on Friday, June 29th. I talked to her on Wednesday. Very brief, telling me how sick she was, begging her to go to the doctor, and she said, "You just don't understand, Mom." And I said, "No, I don't understand."
That was her like favorite line.
Yeah, you don't understand.
She gave you that a lot too.
Oh, yeah. We didn't talk for a while because she had messaged me over Facebook several months prior to, I think it was like sometime in February. I mean, it was a while ago. It was while the gift shop was closed. And she tried to pull that.
Dreaded gift shop.
Oh, the gift shop. But she was like, because I was offering, I was like, with all my connections, my good, healthy, positive connections, I can get you into a treatment center, like anywhere. Just pick where you want to go, and I can get you in. And she, you just don't understand. You don't get it. And I'm like, you can pull that shit on Mom, but you can't pull it on me because I've been there and I've done that. And like, in case you forgot, like we were in addiction together.
So you're pretty direct with her.
Oh, I was. And she hated it, didn't she, Mom?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, she used to cuss me and dog me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm your sister. I'm in recovery. I've been there. So I'm going to tell it like it is. And she usually always got over it. It took her a little while, though. Sometimes she stayed mad at me as long as for like a couple weeks. The last message I got from her was in early May, and I was driving, so I was ignoring her. And she messaged me again and was like, "Well, dang, like I was just trying to tell you I love you." I was just like really short with her. I was like, "I can't talk right now. I'm driving, but I love you too." That was the last thing I ever said to her. So that hits me hard sometimes. I feel like she probably always thought that I was just too busy to talk to her, or like I didn't want to. And I think too, she kind of dreaded talking to me at times because I was so straightforward with her.
She knew you would be upfront with her.
Mm-hmm.
She visibly was able to see your personal transformation that you were doing and the work that you were putting in.
Right. And she was always really happy for me.
Oh yeah, she told me numerous. I'm so proud of Courtney. I'm so proud of Courtney, and I'd remind her, you know what? You can be proud of yourself too. Just all you gotta do is put forth that effort.
And like, she never got to tell me, but I guess she told Mom a bunch, like how ecstatic she was I was going back to school. So I think too, like in the end, when push come to shove, like even if I started school in the beginning and it wasn't for myself, it could be for my sister.
Yeah.
And later on it would be for me and for her and for all the people, who haven't found recovery yet. So yeah, I don't know. I have regrets, but I think one of my biggest things is just keeping like my focus on the good times with her.
Yeah.
She wasn't my sister for the last probably year and a half that she was alive. Just a very dark person, very negative person. It's not the sister that I remember growing up with. So, yeah.
Yeah, I talked to her on a pretty regular basis. Was getting a little bit more distant with her. I didn't realize how sick that she really was, and not just from an addiction aspect. She was very physically sick, and I didn't find out how sick she really was until I obtained a copy of the autopsy report. So there's where, of course, the guilt starts coming in for me. Well, gosh, she's telling you how sick she was, but yet when you tell her to go to the doctor, she'd refuse. And, well, how sick is she really, And, yeah, she was... her official cause of death was acute fentanyl morphine intoxication with contributing factors of bronchial pneumonia with abscesses, which basically she was in the beginning stages of gangrene in her lungs. And in turn, she was also in organ failure. Her heart was failing, her liver was failing, her kidneys were failing. A lot of that, some of that came in from the pneumonia, but the pneumonia was also a result of drug abuse.
Yeah, chronic heroin use.
Mm-hmm.
How old was she?
36.
36.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder, you know, I mean, I just know hearing from her dad those 2 days prior to her dying, and him telling me how sick she was and she refused to go to the hospital. I mean, there was a part of me I was angry with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned her father a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
What type of relationship does she have with him? And then what type of relationship do you have with him?
There is no relationship there. We've divorced many years.
With all these issues going on,
There was
wasn't a lot
there
He
was
only
no
contacted Mom when he didn't know what to do with
when
Lindsay.
he didn't know what to do. In fact, he contacted me on Friday morning, or actually Friday afternoon, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he says, at this point, let me backtrack a little bit. Lindsay led me to believe that she was in sobriety again, and had been since the end of March, beginning of April. So I didn't really think a whole lot about it. That's why I couldn't figure out why she wouldn't go to the doctor. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I get that, you know, you've been treated badly in the past, but regardless, it sounds to me like you're really sick and you probably need to go to the doctor. So all these months prior to her death, I'm being led to believe by her that she's no longer in active addiction.
But you know, you didn't have any contacts with her.
Right.
So, like,
I didn't know.
yeah.
She didn't know.
Uh-huh.
But I believed her because she didn't portray what I would refer to as typical addict behavior from what I heard.
From what you witnessed directly with Courtney.
Right. So, and it's really easy to portray a certain image across the telephone versus one-on-one when you're looking at somebody.
That many miles
Yeah.
away, there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot that you can do. You can't be popping in every weekend. I
Right.
mean, just financially and all those other reasons why. Like,
Yeah, it's a 6-hour drive. Yeah. So I get the phone call from her father on Friday, the day that she died, at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, to inform me that he knows why Lindsay won't go to the doctor now because she's back on drugs. And I'm thinking, really? Okay, well, back on drugs. How did you find she's dope sick? That's why she's refusing to go to the hospital. And I said, well, at that, I mean, she couldn't even get up off the couch.
Those were his
Those were his
words or
words.
her words?
Those were
His
his
words.
words. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of, I said to him, I said, well, if she's as sick as you are portraying to me that she is, and if she's portraying to me that she is, that she can't even get up off of the couch, my suggestion to you is to call 911 and try to attempt to have her involuntarily committed, because if she can't care for herself, obviously she's a danger to herself.
A realistic solution.
Yes.
You're offering a realistic solution.
Yes.
Like, hey, you don't know what you can do, but this is something you can do.
Attempt it
Here
at
is
least.
here is something that you can attempt to do.
Right.
And I'm sure like the laws and stuff are different up there.
Yeah, well, I
as
even went
here.
so far as to look up the general statutes for the state of Ohio and
Okay.
even send the link that says this is what you can and cannot do, and this is for how long you can have this person committed.
Very proactive.
Yes. So that was at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He was going to do that when he got home from work, which would have been about 3:30 in the afternoon. I had made several attempts to get in touch with Lindsay via Facebook, text message, phone call. She didn't answer, and she didn't respond to any of those. So I'm thinking now that after her death, I'm thinking, well, she must have been pretty bad off that she didn't respond to any phone calls. So I don't hear from him, and then my phone rings at 10 o'clock Friday night. When I saw his number pop up on my phone, I thought, he's calling to tell me that Lindsay's in the hospital. I wasn't expecting him to tell me that my daughter had passed away. When 7 hours prior to that, an ambulance was going to get called, and she was going to try to be involuntarily committed.
The last you heard, that was what he was
Yes.
going to do.
Yes. But it didn't happen.
How quickly did you guys go up there?
That phone call came in on a Friday night, June 29th, so we were rolling into a 4th of July holiday. The director of the funeral home where we were going to hold her funeral was out of town for that weekend, so I didn't even get to start making arrangements until Monday.
We were in the car Wednesday.
And we were in the car on Wednesday, which was actually the 4th of July, and the funeral took place on July 5th.
And after receiving the autopsy reports and you were able to, like, how did you discover that she had been using potentially throughout that time that she told you she was?
Oh, through
Was it through the journals? Was it through
No,
the
it was
toxicology?
Friends.
through friends. Mm-hmm.
So
I
her,
knew.
her friends were pretty
Open.
open and
Mhm.
willing to talk.
Yes.
Well, a lot of her friends were in active addiction, and a lot of them got sober, and they had to kind of push Lindsay away too.
So she had people in her life who
That were sober.
Uh-huh.
But she
They-
also had
Like you, they had to keep her at a safe,
Mhm.
you know, hold up to their boundaries and kind of keep a safe distance, offer what they could, but
Right.
Yeah. And I think, too, one of her closest friends was one of her biggest enablers, you know? And, like, I know, through my own story, that when you're doing such a dangerous drug, you feel like the best thing you can do for your friend or your loved one is be there with them while they're using. Make sure you have Narcan. Make sure that you're kind of, like, watching over them. But in the same sense, like, you're killing them, too, you know? In a sense. So even though her friend was trying to be, in her knowledge, the best that she can be, she wasn't helping the case. And I just want to back up for a minute, and I think, I didn't really do a whole lot of reaching out to my sister, but she didn't do a whole lot of reaching out to me. And the last time I talked to her was in very early May, and it was on Facebook. And I think part of that is because she knows that she couldn't have bullshitted me.
that you wouldn't have, you
yeah.
would have seen right through that story.
Even with whatever she was telling Mom, whatever there was just no way. And I think that she knew that, and that was probably why the attempt to reach out was hardly any. And then when it was like on Facebook, and it would be very brief.
vague.
Yeah, because I think that she was afraid that I would be able to catch on. So, yeah, we left on 4th of July, and the Tuesday before that, the day prior, I'm in Asheville getting a cortisone shot in my hip, because I'm like, my mom and I are in the back of the car.
And you were in so much pain that just driving from here to Asheville
Oh, gosh.
was problematic.
Oh, man.
I remember just
Ooh.
hearing that feedback from you, like, Steve, I don't know how I'm going to make it to the doctor in Asheville.
Mm-hmm.
The level of pain, physical pain that you were in.
Terrible. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm a baby when it comes to pain. I was
Is she?
swollen but it was bad. So here I am. I've got like my leg like laying on Mom's lap, like parallel.
In the car?
Yeah, in the car, and it's we're just in one little small vehicle, and it was a really rough time. And I can remember laying in the hotel bed with my nanny and hearing like fireworks go off and people like
Celebrating the 4th
at
of
the
July.
hotel. Yeah, I'm like, all my friends on Snapchat were like out having a good time, and I remember laying in that bed so damn angry at the world. Screw 4th of July, and I can't believe I have to, be up here and like say goodbye to my sister while my friends are, out having a good time. Like, I just remember like thinking those kind of ridiculous thoughts,
Yeah.
but it didn't seem ridiculous at the time. It was my reality.
Whereabouts did this take place? Ohio?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
The Cincinnati in the city?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where you're from. I seen that. Kinda.
Yeah. Norwood, which is a little suburb of Cincinnati.
I seen the Bengals gear on Sundays. On
We won't
Facebook.
talk about the Bengals.
Let's not get her started.
Talk to you next year.
Man.
I keep picking up one of the wide receivers on my fantasy team every Sunday, and he's been letting me down the last couple of weeks.
Don't do it,
I
Steve.
have.
Let's just change the
I
subject.
totally have. When did your process of healing begin? When did you start to really like kind of work, like actively work? Because like Courtney kind of mentioned with herself, like getting into school and stuff, like she was kind of faced with like a decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm either going to kind of lean into this experience and kind of overcome this, or I can like sit back in it.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know. It was probably
Because like
2 weeks I was just numb.
yeah,
I mean, there were people that I talked to and things that I supposedly said and did that I have to this day no recollection of. Because I was just, I don't
You
know.
were a zombie.
Yeah.
She was a zombie.
I was just, I didn't sleep probably for 72 hours after got the phone call on Friday night. And when I did finally sleep, I didn't sleep much. So we went through the motions of the whole, the funeral and that process and everything. And I went ahead and sent Courtney and my mother on back to North Carolina because I had to wait for, Lindsay's cremains. The funeral was on Thursday. I did not get those until Sunday. So and I said, I'm not leaving. So I'm not leaving my daughter until I'm taking her home with me. I don't care if I have to stay up here another week. I'm not leaving. So I got home and I don't know. It's really all just kind of a blur. I remember spending a lot of time in the basement. And then I think after about maybe the second week after her death, I got on a mission. And I was gonna help the detectives find out who brought the drugs to my daughter. And at that point, I would say a good 6 weeks,
Oh, yeah.
that was all I talked about. That's all I thought
Obsessed.
about. I was online buying the what do you call them, the background people search backgrounds because I was trying to find out where this particular person's last known address was. So I'm going to pay for that background report because the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts only tells me so much, so that's kind of what I was doing. That was my goal. And then finally I was like, I had a lot of people, my mom and my husband, tell me, you can't become just so consumed with this part of it, because at the end of the day, no matter what you find out, it's not going to bring her back. So that was at that point, I think that all become a reality to me. And I said, you've got to channel your energy and your grief into something more positive.
Yeah, I noticed a change then too. And I think it was after you came back from the first time from visiting Nanny, because Mom was obsessed. And it was like breaking my heart at the same time. I'm like, here I am, like on medication, getting counseling, and like, here's my mother who was just like supposed to be the backbone of the family. Nobody, like, I know she felt like nobody wanted to see her grief. So she was supposed to be like the strong one. And then here she is, like Tammy Kimmel, private investigator from the living room
Where did
of
this come
Silva,
from?
Yeah. And I mean, it was like eat, breathe, and sleep detective mode. And it was like, oh my God, how much more can we take of this? And I think everyone in the household was just kind of like feeling strained,
But also, like, you talked about learning pretty early in this experience is like we all grieve differently.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know, obsessing over anything is healthy, but, we all kind of process this change differently.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's like a healthy balance, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, do your thing, but
And I feel like the Night of Hope in Franklin was kind of like a turning point for my mom.
yeah, let's get into that because, like, that was probably
It was still pretty fresh.
yeah, and it was probably the first time that you were actively involved and around other people who had experienced the same thing. We were all gathered there.
It was for me.
Yeah. And so, like, what was it? Because folks tuning in might not know what that was. And then what did you, like, experience while you were there?
Well, it was August 31st, which is, I guess, International Overdose Awareness Day. And there was an event that was held in Franklin, and I believe it was sponsored. Was it Full Circle Recovery? I believe sponsored that event down there. Basically, it's just it's people that have lost a loved one to the disease of addiction. Maybe some of them haven't lost them to the disease as far as in death, but they've lost them as far as having a relationship with them. And it was there was guest speakers. just a lot of fellowship, and then the night ended with a candlelight vigil, and it was just it was definitely a healing moment for me. I think it really just, besides just reading things on the internet and reading statistics, that I got to actually join people that were feeling the same thing or had experienced the same thing that I had just went through, less than 2 months prior to that. So that, to me, that was really, I think Courtney, she's correct in saying that. I think that was like the beginning of the actual healing, the start of the healing for me.
Yeah. And you saw it.
I did,
You
yeah.
witnessed it.
Shortly after, that was when I saw Mom engaging with other people, rock bottom recovery. I know she talks to Stacy a lot. There's other private groups on Facebook, grieving mothers, different recovery groups, and I know that she's always talking to other people, Googling, research and data, plotting things, different groups.
I don't know if I like that word plotting.
Okay, well, I'm not plotting, but
Maybe organizing in my brain.
Organizing
yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah, plotting sounds mischievous.
Yes, it does.
No, I could see you plotting some stuff. Totally.
Courtney never. She would never plot anything.
But yeah, it was refreshing
Yeah.
to see.
I do so much. Like, I'm always going to these different things, but you bringing up this topic, you bringing up this this event, this evening, this thing that we all participated in, I'm going to take it back a little bit. It reminded me that Full Circle's Recovery in Franklin, they do offer a group. Were you familiar with that?
I believe I've seen some of the things posted on Facebook.
Learn to Cope.
Yes, I
Is
have
like
seen
a
it.
support group for parents and family members, spouses, and caregivers of loved ones who are struggling with addiction to opiates, alcohol, and other drugs. They meet on Tuesdays from 7 p.m. till 8:30. So it might be something we're checking out.
Cool.
And kind of getting into, along with touching base with Sherry, who also just clicked on our post. So I think that you might hear from Sherry at some point. Courtney.
Steve.
How much have you thought about your next steps in not only the process of not only your recovery process, but in your education and like goals, and what are you going to do? Because you're about to complete your first semester. I got news for you, girlfriend. There's only 4 semesters. You're going to be graduating that program before you know it, in a blink of an eye.
Oh my gosh.
Unless you drag it out like me.
No.
But
Not at 17 credits a semester.
no. This next year and a half is going to fly by, bro.
I hope so.
So what are you going to do?
Oh my gosh. I think I've had like a vision with everything under the sun. I think for the longest.
I could roll the tapes back and hear what you told me the last time that you were on.
Yeah.
Can you remind me of that?
Yeah, he doesn't know right off the top of his head.
Lucky for Courtney, I guess.
I didn't prepare that much to
I have the upper hand here.
I mean, I could play it, but I can't get it onto this equipment right now.
So anyways, I'm thinking that I still want to do something with with women's prison. I don't know if I want to do like some sort of social work and be like an advocate for the inmates, because I know that there are definitely not enough resources on the inside, and an inmate's voice is not enough. So I'm leaning towards that, but I'm also thinking like, I don't know, I kind of like this semester I've learned that I enjoy writing, which is really weird. I'm doing like very well in my English class, and I kind of like want to write my own book and like be a traveler, like, I don't know, like recovery spokesperson, motivational speaker. I don't know.
Advocate.
Yeah.
You should totally do what I challenged Caleb to do and start a blog. Start there. Just like journaling, putting it out there publicly, allowing other people to kind of grow and heal from your
Yeah.
experiences are.
And I know, like, my English teacher, he's so awesome. Mr. Park is awesome.
That's the dude that I always roll in there. and say
Yeah,
what's up.
he never says anything to you. Like, he's so
I just
awesome.
walk in their class and start
Yeah.
talking to her, and he don't even.
Yeah, he's always like, "What's up, dude?"
That's what I say to the teacher.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But I started sharing Lindsay's story like right off the rip.
In class
In-
discussion or
Yeah,
privately
well,
with him?
both. No, it was like things I had to read out loud that I had
Shout out
written.
Montreal. Go ahead.
Oh no. And he was like, "Oh, she died like 3 months ago this year, like as in like 3 months ago." And I was like, "Yeah, you know." And he was like, "Wow, that's so fresh and so raw. Like, are you sure you wanna share that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, of course I do."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I've written like 3 different pieces on my sister, and he's just like, I don't know. I feel like he kind of like cheers me on and tells me like,
Deep down.
yeah,
It's an opportunity to like educate. Like I know that class is like an entry level like English class. Like it's a beginners like
Mhm.
English 111s, like intro to English kind of deal. There's a lot of young people in that class.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I'm the
you're,
oldest.
You're a younger student.
I am.
In
I sure don't
in
feel like
our-
it.
in our program.
Right.
Many of our students in this program have like life experience, like we both do, but
Mhm.
you're like on the younger side of that, all 27 years of you. But you walk into that class,
Ugh.
and I remember you telling me this when the semester first started. You're like, I feel old in this class.
Old as shit.
But like
So
being open like that and talking about that experience in such detail and being so
Mhm.
like positive about it is like a huge, like we talked about the stigma like at the beginning at some
Mhm.
point tonight, and like just that right there, like it's a like I believe that it is like a level of respect that these
Mhm.
younger there's high school kids in that class.
15
Yeah,
is,
there's for real.
is the youngest.
Wow.
Yeah, for real. There's
And like
high
a
school.
lot of 16 and 17-year-olds.
High school kids, and to hear them
Mhm.
like for them to hear you speak so openly about both probably your experience and then the going through what you went through with the loss of your sister this year,
Right.
that's like a level of respect that's just, you know, probably something that they've never heard before, for them to like teach. So like I guess what I'm getting at is that like you don't have to like get a microphone and do a podcast or get a
Mhm.
blog and post it out on Facebook. Like our actions, our behavior can and will influence so many people, so often unseen.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning just by like doing what you're doing,
Right.
you're influencing that change that I questioned at the beginning. How do we do it? Where do we start?
There's
Right.
strength and healing and honesty. There has been for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I know all my classes know that I'm in recovery, and I'm pretty sure each class knows that my sister passed away. And it was all revealed like at different times, you
Mhm.
know? And it just kind of like came out. And I'm pretty sure at least one person in every class was like, "Oh my God, your sister died right before school started." And they're like, "How are you even here?" And I don't know, like, I don't think of it like that, you know? And so when people, I mean, I have been asked that a lot this semester. How are you in school? How do you come 4 days a week, perfect attendance, straight A's, and your sister just died? I don't know.
What's your answer? What do you tell them?
I just do it. I do it because I want to, you know? So, I don't know. It's kind of like crazy, but kind of cool too to see like how other people view you
Yeah.
in that sense. So,
You're definitely making an impact, girl.
yeah.
I'm proud of you. I know your mama's proud
Oh,
of you.
yeah.
Mama Tammy.
Mama T. What about you?
Like I said, my goal right now is I really want to get a support group. I think we're lacking here. I've looked out for, or reached out for some support groups for mothers, not necessarily even mothers, maybe just parents,
Yeah.
family members. I had no idea where to go, and I was like, I wasn't trying to go into any kind of formal grief counseling. That was not really what I was feeling. I was just wanting to interact with people that kind of live the same experience that I have. And you know, it's a really difficult thing to go through this. I mean, the collateral damage that gets left behind, the shattered hearts and the broken families, and I mean, it's I don't wish this on any parent ever.
Yeah. And again, like to take it back, like to just like being in this rural community, it's like we just named off like 2. You're going to drive to Asheville once a week, an hour plus back over the mountain to Franklin, 40 minutes, 45 sometimes. Like,
And that doesn't work for someone like me that has night blindness. I mean, I'm not getting across Cowie Mountain at night.
On a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So, I mean, just like different things. And connecting with those social media, like, groups and people, you know, finding those people that way and having those conversations in a somewhat safe like environment is definitely crucial. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're almost at 2 hours. And
Wow.
I gotta go to the bathroom really bad. I drank too much of that coffee, man.
I know, you chugged it.
I know. So I think that I'm very grateful that you both, you know, not just like were willing, but like came to me and said like, hey, I think we're ready.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about this. I know that what you have shared tonight will resonate with people who are tuning in. I know that what you shared tonight will help create that, will help open up that mindset to overcome these challenges that life throws at us. The things that you talked about, Courtney, the loss of your daughter, like there's, it's definitely inspirational what you guys have done just in this last year. It's just and like to think about it, like in the grand scheme of things, Courtney, like this is the beginning of the road, dog. Like you have like, you are by doing what you've done so far, like the end of the road, the opportunities are just so endless. Like you are going to affect so many people's lives.
Heck yeah.
By putting in the work, dog. And that's, own it, man. Like own it. Be proud. You have a lot to be proud of. I'm proud of you for what you've done.
Thanks. I'm proud of
like,
myself.
I feel fortunate to like not just like be a classmate, but to like be friends with both of you guys, you know, like you play a valuable part of my recovery.
Thanks.
You just roll your eyes at me?
No, no, I looked over.
She totally did.
No, I didn't.
She totally did.
Steve, I want to just
put
something else out there. If anybody wants to reach out to me out on Facebook, it's Tammy M. Kimmel on my Facebook. My Facebook is not set private. You can go through and read anything that I have posted. I am an open book.
Yeah.
I am a truth talker, not a secret keeper. So any questions, anybody that wants to get involved in a support group with me, please feel free to reach out. This is just the beginning.
Woo, woo.
And Courtney, how can people find your transformation pictures on Instagram?
Oh my gosh. It's Courtney with a K. No, just kidding. It's Courtney Joe _ That's what it is.
Courtney Joe _ on Instagram. Go check out the transformation picture. She's always posted them. So
woo, woo.
Thank you guys for tuning in to NC Raw. I want to thank today's musical contributor, Rival, whose work can be found by searching Rival 727 on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Facebook. Visit our website at www.ncraw.life. While you're there, subscribe to our mailing list. That way we can email you every time a new podcast gets posted. We send it to our subscribers before we release it to the general public. And with that being said, we appreciate you tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was so. Bye-bye. Oh.